Good afternoon. Welcome to Senate Government Affairs. Apologies for the delay. Thank you so much for all your patience. Speaker, I promise it was not my fault. And with that, let's call the roll.
Vice Chair Orenshaw.
Here.
Senator Gorkachia. Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Hansen. Here. Chair Dondero Loop.
Here. Thank you very much, and all are present. So we are going to move right into hearing our bill, and I'll open the hearing on Assembly Bill 357. This measure revises provisions relating to consumer protection, and I see Ms. Adair in the room and Speaker on the screen, and Ms. Contine on the screen as well. So are you going to start? Okay, go ahead when you're ready. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jessica Adair, for the record, and I'm here happily to present a bill, AB 357, that was sponsored by Speaker Jason Frierson. I am going to try to abbreviate my prepared remarks given the late hour in the day and the late day in the session, but happy to answer any questions. For brief context, nearly 10 years ago, the Nevada Attorney General's office entered into a multi-state settlement and a separate state settlement with Bank of America as a result of the 2008 mortgage crisis. And after those respective settlements, the state of Nevada received $1.2 billion in consumer protection in borrower relief directly to borrowers, as well as $87.3 million to the state of Nevada for consumer protection efforts. A majority of that funding was directed to the Department of Business and Industry to ameliorate the effects of the mortgage crisis, but a portion of that funding was designated to be used by the Attorney General's office. And then Attorney General Catherine Cortez Masto directed this funding to be used primarily for two purposes. One, the creation of positions in the AG's office to help Nevadans by investigating and prosecuting consumer fraud, and two, a grant program to the legal aid organizations that provide consumer protection legal assistance to low-income Nevadans, and you may have heard of that program referred to as the Home Again program. This funding has been absolutely critical to our state and has helped so many Nevadans. In the past decade, the AG's office has answered call after call from constituents who didn't know where to turn after being scammed. We've investigated and prosecuted countless fraudsters who steal from the vulnerable. And I will spare you the details of some of those success stories, but you've probably heard of the Equifax consumer data breach, Guardianship Fraud, transvaginal mesh, Volkswagen. All of these settlements were as a result of the Consumer Protection Office at the Attorney General's office. But we all knew that the time would come when this funding would be depleted, and that day is here, and it could not come at a worse time for this state. If a new mechanism is not created to fund these efforts, our office could lose 26 full-time positions dedicated to consumer protection efforts. This includes attorneys in our Bureau of Consumer Protection who investigate violation of Nevada's consumer protection laws. It also includes sworn peace officers who investigate fraud and elder abuse, prosecutors who bring justice to fraudsters, and administrative professionals who support these divisions and also serve in our constituent services unit, fielding thousands of complaints from Nevadans victimized by scams and fraud. And as you can imagine, they were on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis and the resulting scams and eviction crisis in the state. In addition, legal aid organizations will lose millions of dollars in annual grant funding. We were faced with three choices. One, end the program entirely, which is frankly not acceptable. Two, ask this legislature for millions of dollars in general fund to replace the funding, which, given the time, is not reasonable. Or think outside the box. So with the input of stakeholders and legislative leadership, we crafted an alternate solution. And AB 357 is simple in design and efficient in structure. The goal is to direct sporadic settlement funding to consumer protection needs. And it's accomplished as follows if you're looking at the first reprint of the bill. I'm going to skip to the end first. In sections 4, 5, and 6, settlement funds are placed into a consumer protection administrative account. There are some exceptions, such as restitution to victims and certain other recoveries. The Consumer Protection Administrative Account replaces an account that currently already exists for administrative purposes. And this account covers many of the administrative costs of consumer protection investigations and litigation, and is designed to not fall below $500,000. For example, we use this fund to pay our share of costs in a multi-state investigation. In Sections 2 and 3, money that is not used for administrative purposes is then transferred from the Consumer Protection Administrative Account into the Consumer Protection Legal Account. And then that funding, the Consumer Protection Legal Account, is then divided into two equal amounts. 50% goes to fund Attorney General staff that work on consumer protection efforts and other consumer protection activities led by our office, such as public education. And then 50% goes to fund consumer protection efforts throughout the state by the 3 legal aid nonprofit organizations that are currently receiving Home Again funding: Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, Nevada Legal Services, and Washoe Legal Services. And the distribution that is in the bill is the current distribution of the Home Again funding. For transparency and accountability, the legal aid organizations are also required to submit financial statements regarding the use of the funding, and the AG's office has the right to audit the legal aid organizations and how they use that money. This solution, while some may argue is not perfect because we have no way of anticipating incoming settlement funds to the state, is one that has the potential to be self-funding in its success. The bill also allows our office to carry forward revenue to manage our funding and avoid future shortfalls. Most importantly, this bill allows us to continue doing our job to help Nevadans. No one in this state investigates and prosecutes fraud like the AG's office. No one else in this state investigates and prosecutes individuals and companies who violate our consumer protection laws like the AG's office. These lawsuits are what brings settlement funds to the state in the first place, and this bill preserves our ability to do our jobs and pay for those jobs. And no one else in the state provides legal assistance to low-income Nevadans on consumer protection efforts like the legal aid organizations. And on that note, with the chair's permission, I'd like to tender the mic to Speaker Barbara Buckley, Executive Director of the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Speaker Buckley. It's a pleasure to have you on my committee. We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you.
That is because I did not turn off the mute button. So I apologize for that.
It's okay.
Madam Chair. Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Barbara Buckley, and I'm the Executive Director of Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. We are the state's largest legal aid organization, providing free legal assistance to individuals who cannot afford an attorney with civil cases. One of our most important programs is our Consumer Protection Unit. In our system of law, the AG's office can prosecute consumer fraud cases and file actions against wrongdoers on behalf of the state, but cannot represent an individual who is defrauded. And if you cannot afford an attorney, well, that's where legal aid comes in. Without it, someone can lose their life savings, their home, their property, their shot at the American dream. A good example of this is guardianship fraud. A few years ago, predatory guardians were ruining the lives of vulnerable Nevadans. Someone would show up on a doorstep saying, "I've now got guardianship of you." Before you knew it, the senior was placed out of their home, placed in a group home, and had their life savings dissipated by a fraudster. In these types of cases, legal aid then got involved, and now we're appointed at the beginning of these cases to prevent the fraud from happening in the first place. I can give you so many examples: foreclosure, predatory lending, scams. I mean, there's a scam a minute, especially here in Las Vegas. But I'll spare you the details because I know how short your time is. As mentioned by Ms. Adair, legal aid organizations in our state, Washoe Legal Services for Washoe County, Nevada Legal Services for the Rurals, Legal Aid Center for Clark County, have been funded by the National Mortgage Settlement for over a decade. At a time when the funding is needed more than ever, we've run out. This is a solution to keep us going. We hope this innovative approach wins your approval. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Was Ms. Contine going to talk, or?
Hi.
Go ahead,
I'm just
please.
here if there are any questions, and basically to offer me to, I'll just add quickly that, we use home again funds in the same way that Speaker Buckley mentioned, and just grateful to have consideration for this bill so that we can keep doing this great work that we've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, questions committee. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a question on, I guess, Section 4, Sub 3. So the discretion of the consumer advocate. So I'm actually not clear. So the consumer advocate is in the AG or BNI?
Thank you for the question, Jessica Dare, for the record. It's in the AG's office, and the consumer advocate currently serves as the chief of our Bureau of Consumer Protection. When the bill was originally drafted, it only had those 2 dates, and what we wanted to avoid is if we had a significant amount of money sitting in that administrative account, but we were running out of money in the legal account, to just have the ability in the consumer advocate's discretion to move that money over to the legal account, so we didn't end up in a situation where we wouldn't be able to pay for our staff in a shortfall.
So my question is, because the language reads any amount in the excess of 500,000. So what are the chances that there will be an excess of 500,000, right? And so how many transfers are envisioned to occur? Because clearly the language is there. It's not, to me, I didn't see it as a limit. I saw it as, this is the overage that I want you to make sure we get.
Thank you, Jessica Dare, for the record. Yes, it is the overage, and so we want to keep that $500,000 that we have the ability to participate in multi-state investigations that often have cost sharing. But to answer your question, how much settlement funding do we get? It is totally random and very unpredictable. We get an average of about $3 million per year in settlement funds, so we do anticipate there will be overage, and that's what we want to use that overage for, is for AG staff and for legal aid. Sometimes we'll have a banner year and get a $10 million Volkswagen settlement. Sometimes we won't have a lot of settlement funding, but frankly, I can't be too sad about that because it means the state has not had its consumer protection laws violated. So, but yes, the goal here is that we have continued funding to participate in those multi-state investigations, but everything else besides what we need to just keep doing our job goes to the AG's office and legal aid organizations for consumer protection purposes only.
And then just one final question. How much is required to be in the internal reserve?
Thank you, Senator Neal, Jessica Dare, for the record. So that is it's 120 days of operating costs. And what we're doing here is we're forcing the AG's office to ensure that it has an internal reserve to pay for its staff before it pays for anything else. We want the AG's office to manage this money effectively and ensure that our staff are funded first. If the AG's office, for example, has a great excess of money that we know we'll be able to fund those staff in the foreseeable future, we might be able to use that excess money for example, public education or to do other programming around consumer protection. But what we don't want to do is get in a situation where the AG's office has spent money on other things without paying for its staff first. And this is really just a legacy building exercise for future attorneys general.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Vice Chair Orenshaw, any questions?
Well, not a question, but I appreciate the bill, appreciate General Ford bringing the bill, and to former Speaker Buckley and to former Director Contine, appreciate all the hard work you do at your different legal aid offices there, and in terms of helping our constituents. I think that you fill a vital need that certainly, looking back at Nevada that I grew up in, it was very, very lacking. So appreciate the bill and appreciate everybody's hard work.
Thank you very much. I have a question. Speaker Buckley, can you tell me how many, cases or people that may come into the office that are looking for assistance with this kind of legal help?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The numbers for our organization, especially with the pandemic, are off the chart. Last quarter, it was over 10,000 requests for services just to our organization alone. We are the largest recipient of funding, of course, but we've used that to build up. We have over 14 FTEs paid for from this funding. And the cases, as I mentioned, it's everything from guardianship fraud to, scams. You name it, we see it. I think my favorite one from last year was an organization called Uber, but it was spelled UBRE, and it convinced individuals to go into their own business. Here, buy these cars. You'll work with us at Uber. You'll create your own small business. Well, there was no such thing. And so all these cars were purchased in their names. And so we had to sort out with the dealership, get the cars back to the dealership, get these folks out of the system. The AG ended up getting involved. But the things we see, you would shake your head.
Thank you. As I always say, if they only were being productive instead of non-productive, we would be in business. So thank you very much. Additional questions from Senator Gokachia or Senator Hansen? Well, if I see no questions, you must have answered them all. So we will go to the public and support, opposition, and neutral. Do we have anybody in the room who is in support? Not seeing anybody, we'll go on to Zoom or the lines. Broadcasting, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. If you would like to testify in support of AB 357, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in support of AB 357, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the room in opposition? Please come forward, sir. Thank you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. I have no idea what this bill is all about, but I can see that it enhances the bureaucracy greatly. And if we're talking about frauds against the people of the state of Nevada, look at the last year where the state and the local governments, which are presumably under your purview, spent billions of dollars paying their employees while prohibiting the majority of the society from even working. And it looks, from what the person here said, testified, they're really concerned about the employees, not about retaining their employees and being able to pay their employees, and not about the services to the public, to the people that are harmed. The public was harmed immensely by the actions of the government during the last 12 months or 14 months. Then someone talks about guardianship. I had a radio program back in 1994, and a councilman Miller from the city of Las Vegas also had a radio program, and we talked about the guardianship fraud that was being committed at that time, clear back then, and there was no action by the government. The government itself was committing the fraud. The government creates 90% of the fraud in this state. So I don't know how it relates to this particular bill, but it's really interesting to see how we're out to protect all the employees of the government and all the government, but huge harm being done to private individuals. All these people that are being forced to have people in their homes and can't collect rent that was agreed upon. And the government is supporting that. And the Attorney General is supporting that. Telling people, yeah, go ahead and rip off your landlord. I know I have a neighbor who has people not paying rent, even though they have plenty of money to pay the rent. It's fortunately I haven't been subjected to that, but I have a neighbor who's losing tens of thousands of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yuling. It's good to see you in the building. Any additional opposition in the room? If not, we will go to broadcasting when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 357, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Then we'll move to neutral in the room. Seeing none, we'll go to neutral with broadcasting.
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 357, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will ask Ms. Adair, do you have some closing remarks on Assembly Bill 357?
Thank you, Chair. Jessica Adair for the record. I don't know quite how to respond to some of the accusations that were made on the record against the Attorney General, but to the extent that the committee has questions about these specific positions that we're seeking to use settlement funding to pay for, it is Constituent Services Unit staff, criminal investigator 2 and compliance auditor positions who work in our financial fraud and elder abuse division, attorneys who work in our criminal prosecutions division who prosecute financial fraud, as well as attorneys and legal support staff in our Bureau of Consumer Protection. And I will say that it will save bureaucracy in that you will not see my face in the future at the Interim Finance Committee asking for permission to spend settlement funding on anything other than consumer protection. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adair. Speaker Buckley, do you have any closing remarks?
No, Madam Chair. In respect for your time, just thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 357. But I would also like to work session this bill if we don't have any more discussion. So I would entertain a motion. Do pass?
Move to pass, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Ornshaw. Do I have a second? Second from Senator Neal. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay? Thank you very much. The motion carries. And right now, I will take that floor statement. And with that, we'll move on to the last piece on our agenda, and that will be public comment. And please remember that during our public comment time, you can comment on anything that is not related to the bill that we just heard. So I will open up the floor. If there's anybody in the room who would like to make public comment, please come forward. Not seeing anyone, we'll go to broadcasting.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to speak in public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to speak in public comment, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no one wishing to speak in public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close our meeting on government affairs, and I believe Leg Ops is going to start right away, so we will excuse ourselves and change seats and start all over again. Thank you very much for all your time. The meeting is adjourned.